Baseline Facetime podcast, and we've got another great episode coming at you right now. Let's go. What's going on, everybody? Welcome in to the Baseline Facetime podcast. Recording here on March 15th, episode 34 of the pod. It's been a couple weeks, actually, and there's a couple reasons for that, but wanted to wait until we are now post All-Star break. And so in the NBA, we are well into now, a couple games into for each team, the second half of the NBA season, and looking forward to how it's going to shape out. So we're going to get into that. We're going to talk about the All-Star break. We're going to talk about some news, notes, and standings, things that are going on currently around the league, recap the wild All-Star weekend that it was, just a little bit. I know that's been quite a few days now. Talk about who our early season MVP here is on the Baseline Facetime podcast. Give out some other awards like the Baseline Baller of the Week, and just dive into the second half. And as you know, if it's the middle of March, it's also March Madness NCAA tournament bracket season. So I'm going to the selection committee, Selection Sunday was yesterday. I'm recording here on Monday, the day after the tournament here starts at the end of the week. I'm super excited about it. We missed out on the NCAA tournament last year, so I'm going to talk about my bracket a little bit. It's nowhere near complete right now. It takes me usually a few days to figure out who I want to pick, but I'm going to just go over some things, on that side of basketball at the end of the show. So if you want to fast forward to that, you are more than welcome to do so. But we're going to get into that and a whole lot more. I might give a few predictions for the NCAA tournament, again, starting up here in just a few days. But man, let's start in the NBA. So the NBA All-Star break is over. Teams are back to normal. There was an All-Star game this year, if you hadn't heard. Team LeBron was dominant in that All-Star game. I mean, it wasn't even close. If you didn't watch it, you didn't miss much. LeBron might just be the best GM there is. He usually fares well in these All-Star games, but his starters were unbelievable. So he had Steph, Luka Doncic, LeBron himself, Giannis, and Nikola Jokic, the starting five for them. And Team Durant was a little shorthanded. Durant was the team captain, of course, but he was injured. Joel Embiid was another starter for Team Durant that was forced to not be able to play due to his barber testing positive for COVID. If you haven't heard that news released on the day of the All-Star game, that Sunday. Both Ben Simmons and Joel Embiid were ineligible to play due to that. Crazy situation, but Giannis was the All-Star MVP. We haven't seen a whole lot else of fallout just in terms of players contracting the virus while all meeting up in Atlanta or anything like that, so nothing too crazy. Steph Curry won the 3-point shootout. Anthony Simons won the dunk contest, and it was a pretty whack dunk contest, I will say, and it was kind of forced to be due to it being at halftime. It was not really an all-star weekend, if you will. It was kind of all-star pushed into a couple hours. The dunk contest happened at halftime of the all-star game, and so do with that what you will. Not the best dunk contest in recent memory, that's for sure. So let's talk about the standings and where we sit right now. Again, we're pretty much at the halfway point of the NBA season, and so let's take a look at where some teams are at and who needs to make a move and who's sitting in a pretty good spot. So we have the Utah Jazz leading the Western Conference still. We know that the tear that they have been on, I think they won 20 of 21 games at one point. They've come down to earth a little bit, losers of 3 of 6 heading into the break. Currently sitting with a 2.5 game lead in the West. The Suns, Lakers, and Clippers all trail the Utah Jazz, and they're all within a game and a half of each other for those seeds 2 through 4 in the Western Conference. And then I believe, I looked at this a couple days ago, but I believe the 5 to 10 seeds in the Western Conference are only separated by about 3 games. So you've got those four top dogs, if you will, out west with the Jazz, Suns, Lakers, and Clippers, and then you've got the next six teams vying for those last few spots in the West, and they're separated by just a few games. I'm really eager to see how this season's going to end, and as we're getting close to, again, just over halfway, but we're getting close to crunch time, and who's going to make a move, and who's contenders and who's pretenders. We're kind of in that season, are about to be. So very exciting stuff going on in the Western Conference. That's where we stand right now. The Sixers currently lead in the Eastern Conference, winners of 5 straight and sitting at 27-12. Though, as a Philadelphia 76ers fan, I am quite aware of who is on their heels, and that's the Brooklyn Nets. Brooklyn, I think, is winners of 4 straight, and they are currently just a game back of the 76ers in the Eastern Conference, followed by the Milwaukee Bucks, who are 2.5 back of first in the East, and then the seeds toward the bottom of the Eastern Conference are similar to the West. You got the 4 top dogs out west. You kind of have 3 right now as it sits in the Eastern Conference. Believe it or not, the Charlotte Hornets currently sit at 5th in the East, and the New York Knicks sit at 7th with All-Star Julius Randle. Shout out to him. I remember, it was early on in the NBA season, and one of our segments, buying or selling, said Julius Randle, All-Star or not. And he turned out to be an All-Star this year. So shout out to him. He's got the Knicks sitting in 7th place. R.J. Barrett is playing pretty well this season, in addition to Julius. So we'll see if the Charlotte Hornets and New York Knicks can hang on to playoff spots. That would be something else. The defending Eastern Conference champions out east, the Miami Heat, are kind of putting it together as of late. They're winners of 4 straight, 9 out of 10. And over that 9 out of 10 game span, Jimmy Butler is averaging nearly 25 points a game, 7 boards, 9 assists, and over 2 steals. I think he's shooting over 50% from the floor. So Jimmy Butler has the Miami Heat poised to make a run. They're sitting at 4th in the East. Again, before this little run they were on, they were significantly below 500. Now they're 3 games over 500. And again, listen to those numbers again. 25 points, 7 boards, 9 assists, over 2 steals, and over 50% from the floor over these last 10 games, as Jimmy Butler has the Heat where they want to be, and they're improving after a slow start, much needed push right here around the midway point of the NBA season. Now we're going to get into my MVP here on the Baseline FaceTime podcast. There's a few guys who are, definitely worthy of consideration for the midseason MVP. You look at a guy like LeBron James, who's probably been in that conversation for the last 15 years. You look at a guy like Nikola Jokic and what he's doing with the Denver Nuggets. They're currently sitting at 5th out west, just a couple games back of the Clippers, 3 games back of the Lakers. And then you've got a guy like Joel Embiid, who has his 76ers sitting at 1st place in the Eastern Conference right now at 27-12. And that is our mid-season MVP, Joel Embiid. He seems to be the front runner, not just here. It's not just a bias kind of thing from myself here on the Baseline FaceTime podcast, but Joel Embiid is a front runner for this award so far, and the numbers don't lie. The standings don't lie. Joel's put up monster numbers in years previous, but the Sixers have been a 3, 4, 5 seed at the time, and he's had the Sixers at the number 1 seed right now in the East. They've been there for a little bit now. Joel's averaging 30 points a game, almost 12 boards, 3.5 assists. He has 5 games. This is probably his stat that proves his dominance this season. Joel Embiid has 5 games this year of 40 points and 10 rebounds. So of at least 40 points, 10 boards, 5 times this season. The rest of the NBA, The rest of the NBA combined has 4 such games. Joel Embiid has 5 40 and 10 games. The rest of the NBA has just 4 of those games altogether. He's been dominant this year. There's no doubt about it, and that's why he's the front runner right now for the MVP. And not even to mention what he's able to do on the defensive end. We know the Sixers' struggles this year, especially early on when Joel Embiid has sat out games, and now the Sixers have a chance to see what they can do without Joel Embiid, as he had a bone bruise on his knee. Looked like it could have been much worse. He went down, left the game, had an MRI and all of that stuff, and just a bone bruise. He's going to be reevaluated here in a couple weeks, but that means the heavy load's going to be on Ben Simmons and Tobias Harris to see what they can do. They've been able to win a game or two without him already on the second half of the season. So big loss for the 76ers, but Joel, once he gets back and healthy, I think he's going to pick up where he was. And he is the midseason MVP here on the Baseline FaceTime podcast. Some other hardware that we get to give out and that we normally give out each and every week on the show. Hardware. I don't know why I call it that, but maybe that'd be cool if we actually did have hardware for these awards. But the Baseline Baller of the Week, I think he might have been a Baller of the Week, or he was at least mentioned in that conversation, quite a few episodes ago, is LaMelo Ball. All right, we already touched on the Hornets sitting at 5th place in the Eastern Conference, but LaMelo's last 5 games, listen to these numbers, or maybe 5 of his last 6 or 7 games, LaMelo has put up 30, 6 boards, 8 assists, 24, 4 rebounds, 12 assists, 22 points, 7 rebounds, 6 assists, 20 points, 4 boards, 8 assists, and most recently 21 points, 7 boards, and 4 assists. I mean, the dude is playing at a high level, at an extremely high level, and I think just recently plugged into the starting lineup, and he's there to stay. Coach has no intention of taking him out. But shout out to LaMelo Ball. Really cool to see what he's been able to do in a brief window, obviously, as a rookie. But, man, he looks good this year, and he's got the Hornets in a position that they're not often in, and that's in the playoffs right now. So shout out to LaMelo Ball. Another shout out actually to his brother, Lonzo Ball, with an interesting stat that I saw this week that caught me by surprise. So Lonzo came into the NBA with an interesting jump shot, to say the least. I think we can all agree with that. Some interesting mechanics. Yeah, we'll just leave it at that. But Lonzo has since improved, both mechanically and his statistics from the three-point line. So from downtown this year, this is surprising to me. It just listen to these names. Lonzo Ball has 102 three-pointers made this season. That is more than the likes of Trae Young. We know what he can do from behind the arc. Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. Lonzo Ball has made more threes this season than those guys, and that's just hilarious to me because, again, knowing what Lonzo is known for, knowing his abilities even coming into the league, and his interesting form from three-point line, but he has made more threes than Trae Young, Luka Doncic, LeBron James, Jason Tatum, Bradley Beal, and Devin Booker. And that was the stat that caught me off guard this week. That might actually have to be a new segment on the show. We'll have to see if we can work that in, but that is definitely the one this week. Lonzo Ball, shout out to him. Shout out to the Ball brothers doing their thing. Not sure what LiAngelo Ball's doing or LeVar's doing, but the two of them that are actually in the NBA are having a good season this year. Couple more things before we get into the March Madness and the bracket and some predictions there. Obviously a notable signing recently, Blake Griffin with the Brooklyn Nets. I mean, you think about this team that they've assembled. So you got the 3 superstars. You got a guy like Blake Griffin, who's been a superstar in this league. You got a guy like DeAndre Jordan who's been a superstar in this league. I mean, that starting five, just like in terms of the name, is phenomenal. You know, those two guys, got Kyrie Irving, got James Harden, got Kevin Durant. Just on like status alone and respect around the league kind of thing, the Brooklyn Nets are pretty stacked. And we know the three superstars, but that's going to be interesting. I mean, they're only a game back in the Eastern Conference. We'll see if Blake makes a difference. I mean, he's not the Blake Griffin of old. We know that. But to his credit, he's one of those guys who, again, he comes into the league, and for the first however many years, just this super athletic dude jumping over cars in the dunk contest. Hilarious guy. I mean, poster after poster after poster with Lob City in L.A., and he's not really dunking anymore. I don't think he's going to dunk in like a couple months or something absurd like that. But he's still a respected NBA player. He's transformed his game. He can stretch the floor a little bit. He can handle a little bit. So props to Blake Griffin. I mean, he's still relevant in the league. There's no doubt about that. So we'll see how he's going to fit in with the Brooklyn Nets. And again, that begs the question, can the 76ers hold off the Brooklyn Nets in the Eastern Conference, currently leading by a game? But again, currently without Joel Embiid for the next couple weeks. We'll see here. And you know, when Joel Embiid comes back, you know, are the Sixers going to be down 2, 3, 4 games in the Eastern Conference? Are they still going to have the lead in the East? I mean, those are questions that need answers, and they're going to get answers here in just a couple weeks when we see Joel Embiid return to the floor. Another thing worth noting, obviously we know the year that Steph Curry's having. Shout out to him, three-point champion in the three-point contest. Are they going to be able to sneak into the playoffs somehow? I mean, they're currently only a game back in the West, but we know the logjam that the Western Conference looks like right now. Again, just 3 games separating those last few teams. You know, I'd love to see Steph get in the playoffs and get hot and do something. I mean, you got to feel for the guy without, you know, no KD. He left. Klay Thompson's hurt. He's kind of stuck with Draymond, who's, you know, he's not those guys. Just in terms of, like, obviously from the offensive end. But I think that's something to look for as we push for this second half of the NBA season. Will the Golden State Warriors and Steph Curry sneak into the playoffs on that back half of the seeding line between, you know, maybe 6, 7, or the 8th seed? And then something else, we just noted the most notable signing as of late in Blake Griffin. What other contenders are going to look to make a deal? We know PJ Tucker is on the trade block. He could be gone as soon as today, I feel like. I mean, he's been really in the conversation as of late. We'll see if he can get on a contending team. We'll see if anybody else makes some moves to solidify their presence in, you know, as a playoff team, and see if they can make a difference in the playoff run as we push closer to the end of the season. I don't know who else might be on the block. We'll see. I'm not even sure when the trade deadline is this year. I mean, it's just a crazy year, of course. Starting late, a shortened season, a weird all-star break. I mean, everything's weird this year, so I'm not sure when that is, but look for some of these teams to make some moves. I mean, look for, you know, maybe a team like Portland. I don't know what their, you know, situation is like in terms of salary and cap and who could be on the block, but look for them to maybe make a move, see if they can get into, you know, sneak up into that 4-5 line. They're currently sitting at 6 in the West. You know, you got a team like the San Antonio Spurs and the Dallas Mavericks vying for those spots in the bottom of the Western Conference playoffs. You know, maybe Miami Heat and Boston Celtics, can they establish themselves as, you know, contenders to go along with the Sixers, Nets, and Bucks? Because again, those 3 teams are at the top of the East, and the Heat and Celtics are 3-4 games back of them. Are they going to make a move? You know, are they going to look to sign someone, make a trade, and go from, you know, middle of the pack in the East to being one of those top dogs that they're certainly capable of being? So those are just some things that I thought of to maybe keep your eye on as we push closer. Again, midway point, I've said it 1,000 times, but midway point of the season, but as we push closer toward the end, what teams are going to make moves and what teams are selling maybe some some guys that they have that other teams want, like a PJ Tucker from the Houston Rockets. The Rockets, by the way, shout out to them. They have lost 16 straight. Yes, 16 straight. So they were, which is unbelievable because before that streak, they were above 500. They were 11-10. They now sit at 11-26, near the bottom of the Western Conference, only ahead of the Minnesota Timberwolves. 16 straight losses for the Rockets. I'm not sure when James Harden left, but it's probably around that time. So not a great look for the Houston Rockets. So major shout out to them. Man, it's March. It's the middle of March, and we know what that means in terms of where we were last year, especially in the sports world. 2020, everything got shut down. There was no March Madness last year. They were calling games in the middle of conference tournament week. The NBA season got suspended, and we were put on hold right now, literally. There was no NBA action, no college basketball action happening a year ago right now. Happy to be back and happy to be able to look back and say, wow, a year ago, look how far we've come, at least in the last year in terms of the sports world. But again, no March Madness last year. There is March Madness this year, and I'll tell you what, I could not be happier. I don't know about you, but I could not be happier. I'm so excited for this tournament to get underway here at the end of the week, and so I'm just going to break that down a little bit, not going to get into it a lot. Like I said, I personally haven't completed my bracket. It's probably going to take me a few days just to go back and forth on some of these toss-up matchups. But initial thoughts on the bracket and the seeding and things like that, I'm going to dive into here right now. So some of my initial thoughts, of course, you got the 1 seeds, Gonzaga, Baylor, Illinois, and Michigan. 2 Big Ten teams representing there. I think of the 4 1 seeds, let's just do it like this. Of the 4 1 seeds, I believe that Michigan has the toughest route. So if you haven't filled out your bracket, you can look at that. I mean, Michigan's got the likes of the 2 seed Alabama. That's not even who I'm worried about. But the 3 seed Texas, 4 seed Florida State. You got an LSU team in the 8-9 matchup that they could see, or St. Bonaventure, who they could see in the round of 32. They've got a tough path. I mean, you look at a team like Florida State, the size that they have, the unique team that they have. I mean, to potentially see Florida State in the Sweet 16 could mean trouble for the Michigan Wolverines. And then again, Texas and their guard play as the 3 seed. I look for them to make it to at least the Sweet 16. At least the Elite 8. I think that they're going to handle Alabama if they see them in the Sweet 16. I think that Texas is going to potentially, again, either match up with Michigan or Florida State. And I do like Florida State in that one. So my Elite 8, at least in the Eastern region, is going to feature a 3 and a 4 seed in Texas and Florida State. I believe that's the way I'm looking. Again, that could change here in 10 minutes. It could change in 2 days. It could change at least definitely by Friday. But that's what I'm thinking right now in the East region. I think there were a few teams underseeded, most notably Oklahoma State Cowboys. They're the 4 seed in the Midwest. How they're a 4 seed, I don't know. I thought they were perhaps deserving of a 2 seed, just the way they've been playing late. They beat Baylor. They beat West Virginia twice, back-to-back, actually, once in the conference tournament. They did that in Morgantown prior to the conference tournament without Cade Cunningham, without Isaac Likely. They're just a good team, and they proved that outside of Cade Cunningham, who's the best player in college basketball. So look for them, a 4 seed. That's going to be a stellar matchup if it happens between them and the Fighting Illini, who are the 1 seed in that region. Potential Sweet 16 matchup there. But again, Oklahoma State's a team that I think is underseeded. I think they are very, very, very talented. So look out for them. A couple other teams. Let's see here. Just looking at the bracket now. I think Gonzaga's got a decent region. Virginia's the 4 seed out there, so they potential Sweet 16. But we know Virginia's COVID issues and things like that. Creighton's the 5 seed. Not particularly impressed with Creighton myself. Um, and Iowa's the 2 in that region. And Gonzaga and Iowa matched up months ago. Gonzaga beat them, of course. Gonzaga is undefeated this season. Whew. We'll see. So I do like Gonzaga to win that region. I think so. If I'm just gonna do it now, might as well make some Final Four picks, huh? So I do like Gonzaga to make that to win that region. In the South region, the Baylor side of things, whew, you got Baylor, Ohio State, Arkansas. A first round matchup that could be an upset in that 12-5 is Winthrop and Villanova. Villanova missing their best player in Connor Gillespie. I think Winthrop might be able to handle him. Villanova just doesn't look the same as of late, so look for that to possibly be an upset. I do like Baylor in that region, although they haven't been the same since their little COVID pause. I think they'll get back to normal. Ohio State's a good team, though. But I think I am going to take Baylor out of the South region. And then in the Midwest, it's tough. It's tough. If I fill out multiple brackets, I promise you I'm taking multiple teams out of the Midwest, one of which will not be the Houston Cougars, the 2 seed. Not a believer in them. They've played one ranked team this year. They lost to Eastern Carolina, who was at the bottom of their conference. So Midwest is tough. Because, again, I think you got 3 teams there who can potentially reach the Final Four, if not more. But you got the Illinois team, the 1 seed. You got West Virginia sitting at the 3. A little biased there. If you don't know, I'm a West Virginia fan. But I think they could potentially make a run. I think that they got a break. Certainly got a good break in terms of their seeding. And then, of course, you got Oklahoma State, the 4 seed out in that region, who's not a 4 seed by any stretch of the imagination. They're a talented team. So I think either of those 3 teams can make it out of the Midwest. Whew. And I don't know who I'm going to take right now. Again, this is very much subject to change, but I guess I'll take... Wow. I'm just going to say Oklahoma State. Just to be different, just to put a 4 seed in the Final Four. So I've got a Baylor-Oklahoma State matchup on the right side of that bracket in the Final Four. I've got Gonzaga up top, and then in the East region, again, going back to this Texas-Florida State matchup, man, if I take Texas, then that's 3 Big 12 teams. That certainly I don't think is going to happen. I'm going to take Florida State. The 4 seed there, I think they're talented. I think they're deep. I think they're long, athletic. They're just a difficult matchup for teams, and I don't think they have too difficult of a path. That Sweet 16 matchup with Michigan will certainly be a great one. And then I've got the Zags moving on from there, and to face the Baylor Bears. So I'm going to take, if you're following along, Gonzaga over Florida State in the Final Four, the Baylor Bears over the Oklahoma State Cowboys. And then I'm going to take Gonzaga to finish it, to complete off, to cap off, whatever you want to say, the undefeated season and cut down the Nets in Indianapolis for their first ever NCAA tournament championship. It's very much subject to change. I promise that is subject to change. We'll see what I actually end up doing. I'm probably going to fill out 2 or 3. But those are, if anything, let that tell you the teams that I kind of like in this one. More so than the picks that I actually just made. But, again, the teams that I like, the teams that I'm big on, Oklahoma State, Texas, Florida State, and then the 2 1 seeds of Gonzaga and Baylor. So two 4 seeds I'm big on, and a 3 seed in Texas I am big on. So book it, write it down, whatever you want to do. Don't hold me accountable to that. I mean, we all know what brackets look like come the end. I mean, that thing could be burnt up by the end of the first night. Like, who knows? That's why it's called March Madness. So your guess is as good as mine as how this is going to play out. But I'm excited. Action tips off on Thursday between, with the four playing games actually, two 11 seed matchups and two 16 seed matchups. And then the Gauntlet NCAA tournament starts on Friday around 12 o'clock. Going all day, first round matchups Friday, Saturday, second round, a round of 32 to punch a ticket to the Sweet 16 on Sunday and Monday all day. Looking forward to it. Going to be great. Just happy to have it. Happy the NCAA tournament is happening this year. And again, all taking place in Indianapolis. Go fill out your bracket. Make sure you do it. Got to do it. You don't need to know anything about basketball to fill out a bracket. It's fun. You should do it. Yeah, do that. All right, so that's all for this episode of the Baseline FaceTime podcast. We'll see you next time. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Baseline FaceTime podcast. If you haven't already, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.